Buenos días. Buenos días. ¿Cómo están? Hi, so I'm Diana Marrero. I'm the founder and director of the Hill Latino, and I want to welcome you to this morning's program, the Hill's second annual Latina Leaders Summit. Bienvenidas. I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors, our premier level sponsor, Telemundo, Spanish language home of the 2018 World Cup, and Comcast, NBC Universal, as well as presenting level sponsor, Bank of America, for making this event possible. When we began planning our first Latina Leaders Summit last year, we had no idea how much support and excitement it would generate. And we were blown away by how many inspiring and accomplished Latinas joined us. And so we're thrilled to be back here today with all of you to keep that conversation going. This year's second summit could not be more timely. From the emotional debate taking place at the border to women running for office in record numbers, Latina voices are growing louder. In fact, just last night, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a 28-year-old Latina activist, delivered a stunning upset in the primaries, defeating veteran Democrat Joe Crowley in New York's 14th congressional district. At a time when Washington is at its most partisan, we're excited to be convening a thoughtful, bipartisan conversation on leadership and efforts to have our institutions more fully reflect the diversity of the American electorate. Today, Latinas hold less than 2% of major public offices. How are current Latina leaders encouraging the next generation to pursue opportunities in politics and government? How can Latinas foster leadership and foster others, not just in politics, but also in the world of business? What conditions need to be created to support Hispanic women entrepreneurs? This morning, we're going to tackle those questions with Latina leaders from both the public and private sectors. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. In addition to our audience here, we are live streaming on thehill.com/events. Please keep your phones on silent, but we do encourage you to engage in the discussion on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at The Hill Events and using the hashtag #TheHillLatina. We're going to be taking questions from the audience during this program, so please be on the lookout for members of our team with handheld mics. And you can tweet questions to The Hill Latina. Finally, there's a short feedback survey on your chairs, and we'd encourage you to complete them at the end of today's program. So let's dive right in. We begin this morning with one of the highest-ranking Hispanics in the White House, Helen Aguirre Ferre. Aguirre Ferre was an award-winning bilingual media personality before heading Spanish language communications for the Republican National Committee. She joined President Trump's White House last year as a special assistant to the president and director of media affairs. Joining her on stage is Lulu Garcia Navarro of NPR, whose voice you will no doubt recognize as the one behind Weekend Edition Sundays. Lulu, the floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to remind everyone that we're here to have an interesting civil debate. So there will be opportunities for questions at the end. But at the moment, I am going to take this opportunity and welcome you.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
We were talking just before about your background and your history, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that. I'm sure everyone is very interested about how you got into politics and how you got where you are.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. My family is originally from Nicaragua. My father was a political exile from 1947, goes back a little bit of a ways, from the first Somoza regime. And he moved to, knew my mom. They were teenage boyfriend, girlfriend. Got married in Costa Rica, lived in Panama, moved to Miami in 1953, where most of us were born and raised.
Yes.
So I'm a Miami girl.
So am I.
And
we had that in common.
Yes, we do. And so it was interesting because my mother, fluent, bilingual, 100%. Her father was from Richmond, Virginia. Her mother, Carmen Mayorga, from Managua. And my dad was both parents from Nicaragua. He spoke English, but with a very, very heavy accent. But it was academically perfect English. And he always thought that we would go back, which I think is what many exiles always feel like they'll go back.
Yes.
And he made sure, or he actually demanded, that we speak Spanish at home because he thought that we would never be able to communicate well with my grandmother, his mom. And so we could speak amongst ourselves, the siblings, in English, but we had to speak in Spanish. Never in my wildest dreams did I think speaking Spanish would actually help me in a professional career. And it did, because most of the work that I did actually was in Spanish language media to a great degree. Did work in English for, I did it so mostly in print and radio, and on top of that, wrote in Spanish. So I was opinion page editor for Diario Las Américas, did surrogate work, consulting, and surrogate work for Telemundo and Univision, did radio for Univision, a national program, for PBS South Florida, did a show in English, one of the few things I did in English. And then towards the end, like in the last year, before joining the RNC, I did a weekly column for the Miami Herald, which was then translated into El Nuevo Herald.
So why get into politics? And was it difficult? I mean, was it, I mean...
Yeah, it was.
So tell me a little bit about that.
That transition was difficult. So on my private side, I did a lot of pro bono work. Governor Jeb Bush nominated me to the Board of Trustees of Miami-Dade College, which is the largest community college in the country. And then I chaired that board for at least 8 years, I want to say. So I did that, and serving was something that was inculcated into all of us by my parents. To serve, it is a privilege to serve. We were raised that way. So I did a lot of service work in that regard. And Jeb Bush, as governor, did so much work on education that we had talked about the possibility that if he ever if he ever needed something with education, count on me. And I served as advisor for his running for president. And then from there, I transitioned to doing Hispanic communications for the RNC, where it was just absolutely fascinating, because even though I did a lot of political commentary and analysis, it's very different than when you're actually in the trenches. And it was difficult insofar as that all of a sudden, instead of it being your perspective, you're representing a perspective. Because I could be a conservative, but I also, in my own domain, was free to be able to agree or disagree or whatever. But when you join a campaign, you're actually representing the candidate, the perspective, what's going on, and that was very different. So that was a big part of the learning curve. But I love to learn something new every day, so I enjoyed that.
So as someone who has had now quite a long history with the GOP, take me into the decision to join this administration.
Sean Spicer invited me to join the administration. We had worked very well together in doing Hispanic communications and Hispanic outreach, of course, with Jennifer Sevilla Corn. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And he offered me the opportunity to join the administration to continue in that work and to expand it further. Because we are Hispanics, but we're Hispanic Americans. And so I wanted to make sure that we would be represented and grow and have that perspective and those different voices, but also, to talk about issues that are important to Hispanics, but they're by and large issues that I think are important to all Americans. And so I thought that it was just a terrific opportunity to be able to do that. And when you're invited or asked to serve, I think if you can, you should.
Take me into a day. I'm riveted. Tell me, what is it like? A typical day in...
There is no typical day.
Yes, inside the White House these days.
There is no typical day. There are some things you can control, and there are some things you can't control. Many of the international events you might anticipate, but there are things that happen that you just can't control. And you try to set a calendar, but time can be fluid, and so things do change. But by and large, we work with an exciting group of people. I'll give you something that most people don't know, but we actually like each other within the administration. That palace intrigue and so on. It's like, well, that's just not my experience in the team and the group that I am blessed to work with. Hardworking men and women, many of them young, selfless, great team workers, trying to advance the cause for, serving the administration, but serving the American people. I mean, I know it sounds corny. It's like, oh, come on. But no, it's actually, selfless service. And I'm in awe of so many of them for their true devotion and dedication to try to do it right.
When you came in to this administration, you said that you wanted to reboot the White House website because the Spanish language website was taken down, and it hasn't been. So I'm just curious, as someone whose role is really outreach to the Latino community, what happened? Well,
they were talking about redoing the website and making a Spanish language website, but they found, and it was taken down. It wasn't that it was taken down. The website that was there previously was archived. It belonged to the previous administration.
Sure.
So this administration never took one down. It just never established one either. We have a Twitter account at La Casa Blanca, but the decision was made that the big emphasis should really be for English language. And by and large, just you and I are both Hispanics. I would say that most of us here actually do speak English. So as important as it would be to have something in Spanish language, I think by and large, most of us actually do speak English to a great degree. And I would like to see something in Spanish language, but is it the most necessary thing that we need? I'm not sure that it is.
What is it? What, at this point, is your message when you're having these conversations and you're trying to talk to Latinos? What are you saying?
In general,
at this particular moment, I mean, it is a difficult time.
Well, this is a difficult time that we've been living for decades now, right? So, is there anything that you are that's being debated in Congress today? For example, we think there might be a compromise bill, or there's a piece of legislation regarding immigration today that, I don't know about you, but wouldn't you relish the day that we don't have to be talking about legislation regarding immigration? We've been doing this since, 1997 easily, when Flores came into being. And so it's old, and the political will for Congress to act on both sides hasn't been there, and that is amazingly disappointing. We saw it in 2007, we saw it in 2014, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to get something done this time around, but that's where really the major change has got to come in. And I think that the public is exhausted of the debate. They're exhausted, and what they really would want is action, and I think that's something that we all really want.
If you look at polls, the majority of Latinos have a negative view of President Trump and his immigration policies, specifically at this particular moment with family separation and zero tolerance. They view this as discriminatory. A poll that I saw in March said that 65 to 70% of Latinos view his policies as racist, and that was the word that they used. How do you address that? What is your response to that?
I don't see the rule of law as being racist. we have laws on the book, and this is something that the previous administration struggled with as well. And how do we deal with the laws that we have and implement the laws so that we have a secure border? And it requires truly an act of Congress in order to be able to fix that and to change that. To have a secure border and to ask people to immigrate legally is not discriminatory. Every country in the world does that. Now, if we are saying no, we should have open borders, well, let's have that debate as open borders and say, let's open it all up, and let's ask Congress then to put that piece of legislation on the floor and let Congress have that debate. But if Congress gives us a set of rules whereby we have to enforce immigration law, then why is it discriminatory to do that? What we would like to do.
There's a choice in the way that you do it. I mean,
but catch and release, we know doesn't work.
But I'm curious, just as a Latina in the White House, I mean, did you support the president's policies on family separation?
I support the president's efforts in securing the border, and I support the president's efforts in ensuring that the laws are enacted properly. I support the president's efforts in having Flores amended so that children aren't separated from their families after 20 days. We have approximately 335 immigration judges today, which clearly isn't enough to handle the backlog of approximately 650,000 cases that they have to process. So we need, it would be easy to say thousands of attorneys, but let's say we could get hundreds of attorneys and judges to be able to help and process these cases so that we can move it at a time that's opportune, move it much more quickly. But clearly you can't do that within a 20-day period within this particular period of time. But mind you also, the majority of children, of the approximately 12,000 children that are in the care of HHS, 10,000 came unaccompanied. And I think that's striking. And that's a number that often gets forgotten. Most of the family separation actually occurs before these minors even come to our border.
I don't want to get too in the weeds on immigration because that's not really why you're here. But I do feel it is important, as someone who represents the administration and as a Latina, do you feel that the GOP has a problem with Latinos at this point because of the perception of the president and his policies? Do you feel that that is something that that the GOP needs to do more to sort of to do more outreach to reach out more to this community?
I think every party needs to always be active and outreaching in the community, regardless of whether you have a problem or not. You have to listen and learn, and I think that's really important. And I think that's one of the things that I learned as a journalist that was really important, that we needed to be doing always, listening and learning and understanding what people need. When I look at what this administration has done for Hispanics, for example, I see unemployment rate for Hispanics at the lowest level ever. And it goes back to what we were saying.
We should say the polls show that Hispanics are incredibly optimistic when you talk about their, economics.
And the economics really plays an important role. Women, Hispanic women as entrepreneurs, having greater access to credit than we've seen in many, many years, and driving force for the development of small business, which I think is absolutely amazing. So when we look at leadership, I see Hispanic women already leaders on many, many levels, maybe not so much on the political front, though I see in local levels much more of that than ever before. But I think on the entrepreneurial level, on the business level, on the civic level, we're seeing an enormous growth.
And so that's my portion. But if you have questions, this is your moment to grab the mic. Or as, actually, you're not allowed to grab the mic, but at least speak into it. We were talking about that before, no grabbing the mic.
I was about to say.
Yeah, oh, look what she said. Yes? Just wait for someone to pass you the mic.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Brittany Bottles. And so I was placed into foster care. I was separated from my family at a young age. And because of my separation with my family, it was very traumatic, and I lost a lot of my Hispanic identity because I was placed into foster homes that were not Hispanic. And so I know the Trump administration just recently signed an executive order to halt the separation of families. But what are we going to do to reunite these families, reunite the families that have already been separated?
I'm glad you asked that question, and I'm so deeply sorry that you had that experience. Actually, in Miami, there was an experience with Cuban exile community, the Pedro Pan, and actually I was speaking to some friends of mine who had that. They were separated. Their parents put them on a plane, unaccompanied minors type of situation, and they were brought to Miami through the Catholic Church, and some had to be sent to Minnesota and upstate New York, and just very different from what they were ever had experienced in Cuba. Having said that, the parents did it for what they thought was the best interest of the child. We know today, yesterday, we had accounted for every child who had been separated from their parents. There is a California judge that ordered last night that all children under the age of 5 have to be returned within 14 days to their families, and those who are older than 5 have to be returned within a 30-day period. We had already been working on that reunification, and we had, up until yesterday, approximately, I want to say 580, and this is just an approximate number, who were returned. But we are working diligently to ensure that that's done as quickly as possible.
Next question.
Thank you for that great question.
Yes?
Oh.
You do get the mic after all.
Yeah, get to hold it. Julian Martinez, what is the administration doing to actively outreach to the Latino community?
To actively?
Outreach.
Outreach to the Latino community, yes.
Well, I think that we have different, through our different agencies and departments, especially through Department of Education and Department of Labor, and a Department of Small Business Administration through Secretary Acosta and Secretary McMahon. There's been an enormous, and Secretary DeVos, there's been an enormous outreach to the Latino community, as well as through Secretary Perry, as far as energy innovation in local communities. And we're very cognizant that whatever the federal government does has to be in support of local and state initiatives. One of the big things that's done, for example, is peeling back the rules and regulations that impede the growth of Latino businesses and all businesses. So when we look at great opportunities, I think that one of the things that we do is it's very important to reach out to the Latino community, but also for Latinos to remember that what's good for Latinos and non-Latinos tend to be very much the same thing. Good healthcare, good access to healthcare, good access to education, to ensure that there's good access to credit, that there's good access, to the opportunity to grow. We don't believe in the equality of results, but we do very much believe in the equality of opportunity. And we work very hard to ensure that that's there. But I do hope, I never feel complacent with what we're doing. We want to and will be doing much more with the Latino community through opportunities such as this one, which is a terrific one, and working through the different chambers of commerce, for example, which are so important to meet these entrepreneurs, and also to engage the leaders. And I do encourage them to please reach out to us and to speak to us. I welcome the conversation. I welcome the civil debate. It's what this country is about, and I think it's what makes us unique and great.
All right. That's it. Thank you so very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.